Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
Something real just happened with the Phillies and Bo Bichette, and we need to talk about how dramatically the landscape has shifted in the last 24 hours. What felt like wishful thinking, what seemed like a pipe dream that made for good speculation but no realistic path forward, suddenly has legitimate momentum. The Phillies have a meeting scheduled with Bichette in the coming days, and according to Matt Gelb and Ken Rosenthal from The Athletic, the organization has done extensive work on what acquiring him would actually require. This isn't casual interest. This isn't kicking tires or doing standard due diligence. When a front office starts mapping out the various roster ripple effects of signing a player, when they're gaming out the financial implications and the personnel moves required to make it work, that signals genuine intent. The Phillies are seriously exploring this, and if it happens, it would fundamentally reshape their roster in ways that go well beyond just adding one player. Let's be clear about what this would require because the complications are significant. JT Realmuto would almost certainly be gone. The standoff between Realmuto and the organization has been ongoing, with both sides apparently far apart on what a new contract should look like. Realmuto wants either more years or more annual value than Philadelphia is willing to commit to a 35-year-old catcher, regardless of how good he's been. That impasse has created an opening for the Phillies to consider redirecting that money elsewhere. Alec Bohm would have to be traded. There's no reasonable scenario where you keep both Bohm and Bichette without creating positional chaos that hurts both players. Bohm just settled his arbitration case at $10.2 million, which actually makes him more tradable because teams know exactly what his financial commitment looks like. That's a movable contract for a productive player, and Philadelphia should be able to find a trade partner if they decide to go this direction. Then you've got the catching situation to solve. The Phillies aren't going into the season with just Garrett Stubbs and Rafael Marchand. They need a legitimate major league catcher, even if that person isn't at Realmuto's level. Victor Caratini has been mentioned as one option, though he's waiting for clarity on Realmuto's situation before making his decision. Ryan Jeffers from Minnesota is another name that's come up, a player the Phillies have shown interest in, who could handle a significant catching workload even if he's never been a full-time starter. The Athletic's reporting estimates the Phillies would need to set aside roughly $6 million to secure Realmuto's replacement. That's substantially less than what Realmuto would command, which creates the financial flexibility to pursue Bichette without completely blowing past their payroll thresholds. It's not elegant, and it means accepting downgrade at catcher to facilitate upgrade at infield, but that's the trade-off Philadelphia would be making. What makes this particularly interesting is how much the internal calculus has shifted. Back in November and December, Phillies officials believed they wouldn't be involved in Bichette's market. They liked the player, but they expected his price tag to exceed what they could realistically offer, especially with their own free agents to retain. But circumstances changed. The Realmuto standoff lingered longer than expected. Bichette's willingness to move off shortstop opened up positional flexibility, and suddenly a path that didn't exist before became visible. The competitive landscape for Bichette is intense. The Cubs and Red Sox both want to add an infielder, whether that's Bichette or Alex Bregman. The Dodgers are always lurking as a potential destination for premium talent. The Yankees could pivot to Bichette if their pursuit of Cody Bellinger falls through. These are big market teams with financial resources and competitive urgency, which means Philadelphia would be competing against serious offers from motivated organizations. What might give the Phillies an edge is the Don Mattingly connection. Mattingly just joined Philadelphia's staff as bench coach, and he worked extensively with Bichette in Toronto. And that relationship matters. Players talk to each other about coaching staffs, about organizational culture, about whether they'll fit in a new environment. Having someone Bichette already trusts and respects in the clubhouse isn't everything, but it's not nothing either. There was also reporting from John Heyman that Phillies players were texting Bichette last weekend about the possibility of joining the team. This was happening while Bichette was celebrating his wedding, which tells you how serious the interest has become from multiple angles. Players recruiting players is always a positive sign. It means the existing roster sees value in the addition and wants to make it happen. The positional arrangement would likely have Bichette at either second or third base, with Bryson Stott playing whichever position Bichette doesn't occupy. Trea Turner would stay at shortstop after a defensive resurgence in 2025 that reminded everyone why the Phillies invested so heavily in him. That infield alignment would give Philadelphia youth, athleticism, and offensive upside that exceeds what they currently have with Bohm in the mix. Here's what this move would signal about the Phillies' organizational philosophy. They'd be choosing to prioritize long-term roster construction over short-term comfort. Real Muto has been the backbone of their pitching program, the veteran presence who handles the staff and calls games with conviction. Losing that isn't trivial. Multiple pitchers have publicly credited Real Muto with helping their development and success, but the organization would be betting that the upgrade from Bohm to Bichette, combined with getting younger and more athletic, outweighs what they lose behind the plate. It's a calculated risk with significant upside and real downside. If Bichette comes to Philadelphia and produces at the level he's capable of, if the infield defense and offense both improve, if the pitching staff adjusts to working with a different catcher without major drop-off, then this becomes the kind of bold move that defines successful championship windows. If things don't break right, if Bichette struggles to adapt or gets hurt, if the pitching suffers without Real Muto's guidance, then it becomes a cautionary tale about fixing things that weren't broken. The meeting itself is reportedly happening via video conference in the coming days, with multiple Phillies officials expected to participate. That's standard procedure for initial free agent meetings. You don't fly everyone across the country until you've established serious mutual interest. But the fact that it's happening at all, that Philadelphia is presenting their vision to Bichette and making their case, represents a significant development in a market that's been relatively quiet. What happens next depends on factors we can't fully see. Does Bichette connect with the Phillies' presentation? Do the financial terms align between what he's seeking and what Philadelphia can offer after moving Bohm and not retaining Real Muto? Do the other competing teams make offers that simply outpace what the Phillies can do? All of those variables will determine whether this becomes reality or remains an interesting possibility that ultimately doesn't materialize. The stakes are enormous for Philadelphia's 2026 season and beyond. They've got one of the highest payrolls in baseball. They're in a championship window with their current core, and they need to make decisions that maximize their chances while that window remains open. Standing pat and running back, essentially the same roster, feels like accepting incremental decline. Making an aggressive move like landing Bichette feels like pushing chips to the center of the table and betting on upside. For Bichette, Philadelphia offers immediate contention, a passionate fan base, a talented roster around him, and the chance to play with a coaching staff that includes someone he already trusts. For the Phillies, Bichette offers youth, offensive production, defensive versatility, and the kind of dynamic ability that can elevate an entire lineup. Whether those mutual interests align into an actual deal is what we're about to find out. The meeting happens in the coming days. The decision tree becomes clearer from there. Either Philadelphia emerges as a serious contender for Bichette's services, or they get priced out and pivot back to their original plan of retaining Real Muto and running with Bohm. But the fact that we're even having this conversation, that a scenario which seemed impossible 2 months ago now has legitimate traction, tells you how quickly off-season dynamics can shift. Drop your thoughts on whether this actually happens and if it's the right move for Philadelphia's championship window.